This is not madness. This is not confusion. This is not your mind falling apart. This is your spirit waking up, expanding, stretching beyond the limits of the world you once fit into. Every chosen one goes through mental battles that others cannot understand, and that's exactly why many chosen ones walk through life feeling strange, isolated, misunderstood, or mislabeled. But what looks like instability to the untrained eye is actually transformation. What looks like too much is actually spiritual sensitivity. What looks like weird is actually discernment that has been sharpened by divine fire. Every day, chosen ones fight silent battles inside a system that does not speak their language. Their minds are wired differently because their spirits are aligned differently. Their thoughts run on frequencies the average person cannot detect. They see through illusions that others absorb blindly. They sense energy, intention, deception, truth, and spiritual vibration before words are even spoken. These battles are not signs of weakness, they are signs of calling. Here are the 7 mind challenges every chosen one faces daily, not because they are broken, but because they have been awakened in a world still sleeping. 1. The battle between sensitivity and overwhelm. Chosen ones feel everything deeply: emotions, energy shifts, spiritual climates, hidden motives, and even subtle changes around them. But this depth doesn't make life easier. It actually makes simple environments feel intense, loud, chaotic, or draining. Rooms that others find normal may feel suffocating. Conversations that seem harmless may feel spiritually heavy. People who appear friendly may feel off, because your spirit reads what their mouth doesn't say. This sensitivity often creates internal conflict. Is something wrong with me? Why do I feel so much? Why can't I just be numb like everyone else? But this is not a flaw, it is a divine instrument. Prophets, healers, intercessors, and spiritually anointed individuals have always held hearts that pick up frequencies the world cannot. Your spirit is tuned to detect what others overlook. The overwhelm is not madness, it is a sign that you were not built for shallow living. 2. The burden of knowing too much. Chosen ones often see the truth long before others. They sense people's intentions. They discern the end of things at the beginning. They know when a relationship, situation, or environment is spiritually dangerous, even without evidence. This inner knowing is both a gift and a burden. Because when you know too much, you cannot unknow it. And when others can't see it, you can't explain it. Many chosen ones stay silent because they know most people won't believe them, or worse, will accuse them of overthinking, imagining, exaggerating, or being paranoid. But spiritual sight is not paranoia. Discernment is not delusion. Revelation is not imagination. God shows you what others are not ready to see. The knowledge feels heavy only because you were entrusted with it. 3. The mental isolation that no one understands. Chosen ones can be surrounded by people and still feel alone. Their minds operate on a higher wavelength, processing symbolism, patterns, meaning, purpose, destiny, spiritual warfare, and the unseen realm on a constant loop. Most conversations seem shallow. Most topics feel empty. Most people talk about the world, while chosen ones think about eternity. You long for someone who understands your language, someone who speaks from the soul, not the surface. Someone who notices signs, not gossip. Someone who feels God in the room even when nothing visible is happening. Someone who understands spiritual warfare without you having to explain it. Someone who knows what it's like to carry a calling that wakes you up at night. This mental loneliness is not a punishment, it is separation. God isolates before he elevates. He sets apart before he sends out. When your mind feels distant from the world, it is because your spirit is aligning with heaven. 4. The constant need to stay vigilant. Chosen ones live with heightened awareness. Their minds are always scanning. Is this from God or from the enemy? What is the deeper meaning behind this? What spirit is operating here? Is this an assignment or a distraction? This mental vigilance is exhausting, but necessary. Chosen ones cannot afford to sleepwalk through life. They are targets of spiritual warfare because of their anointing, calling, and influence. Darkness recognizes them even when people don't. So their minds are trained to stay alert, to discern the unseen, and to guard their spirit carefully. What others call overthinking is actually spiritual strategy. What others call being too cautious is actually discernment. What others call worried is actually watchfulness. The chosen mind is a warrior's mind, Not built for passivity, not designed for ignorance, and not capable of pretending not to see what is spiritually obvious. 5. The pressure of carrying unspoken responsibility. Chosen ones often carry emotional and spiritual weight that no one else sees. They intercede for people who don't pray. They absorb the pain others suppress. They stand in the gap without being asked. They sense danger long before others notice. They break generational patterns without anyone acknowledging it. They heal wounds they never caused. They fight demons that run in the family bloodline. They protect people who think they're overreacting. This inner responsibility makes the mind heavy, not because they chose it, but because their spirit is wired to respond to spiritual emergencies. They cannot ignore injustice, conflict, or suffering. Their hearts automatically rise into the role of protector, healer, leader, or wise counsel. The pressure feels invisible to others, but God sees it. You were not chosen because you are the strongest. You were chosen because you are the most obedient. God trusts you with what others mishandle. 6. The inner war between calling and normal life. Chosen ones know deep inside that they were made for something bigger, but the physical world constantly tries to pull them back to mediocrity, conformity, and comfort. This creates a daily internal tension. Part of you wants simplicity. Part of you wants destiny. Part of you wants rest. Part of you wants responsibility. Part of you wants to disappear. Part of you wants to fulfill your purpose. The chosen mind is always negotiating between the life God called you to live and the life society tells you to accept. This constant tug of war is not dysfunction, it is direction. The calling inside you refuses to let your soul settle for anything less than what God ordained. 7. The fear of misinterpretation. Chosen ones are often misunderstood. Their silence is misread as arrogance. Their discernment is misread as judgment. Their confidence is misread as pride. Their isolation is misread as antisocial behavior. Their insight is misread as intensity. Their intuition is misread as irrationality. Because of this, chosen ones constantly worry about being misinterpreted. They think carefully before speaking. They monitor their expression. They soften their truth. They hide their spiritual experiences. They hold back their divine revelations. Not because they doubt themselves, but because they fear overwhelming others. But you must understand, your light will always confuse those sitting in darkness. Your clarity will always agitate those living in denial. Your spirit will always feel too much for those who run from their own. God did not choose you so you could shrink. He chose you so you could shine. When you step back and look at all these mental battles, they may seem like a heavy burden, but they are actually proof that your soul is set apart. Chosen ones do not think like the world because they do not belong to the world. Their minds are renewed, their spirits are awakened, and their hearts beat in sync with a higher dimension. Every mind challenge is a sign of spiritual elevation. Every inner conflict is preparation for your mission. Every burden is evidence of the anointing you carry. This is not madness, this is transformation. This is not instability, this is activation. This is not sensitivity, this is spiritual intelligence. You are not losing your mind. You are gaining your awareness. You are stepping into your identity. You are walking into your calling. And when God sets apart His chosen ones, He strengthens them through battles the world never sees. You are one of them, and your mind is not your weakness. Your mind is your weapon. Your mind is your compass. Your mind is the place where heaven whispers and where purpose unfolds. You are chosen. You are called. You are sealed. You are awakened. And this, everything you're feeling, everything you're wrestling with, everything you're carrying, is the proof. Every chosen one eventually discovers that their greatest warfare is not external, it is internal. Battles of the mind shape the destiny of the spirit. And when God awakens someone for a divine assignment, their inner world becomes a training ground. Thoughts sharpen. Emotions intensify. Discernment heightens. Awareness expands. The chosen one begins to see life not as a sequence of random events, but as a spiritual landscape full of signs, synchronicities, warnings, and divine alignments. This shift is both beautiful and terrifying, because it forces them to live from a dimension most people deny even exists. You begin to notice patterns you never saw before, spiritual cycles, emotional triggers, repetitive attacks, familiar spirits, recurring dreams, divine numbers, strange coincidences that feel too intentional to ignore. Your mind becomes a place where revelation and warfare coexist. You feel like you're walking between two worlds, the physical world that tries to keep you grounded, and the spiritual world that keeps pulling you upward. And as this awakening deepens, new challenges emerge, subtler, deeper, more refined. You begin to feel the weight of people's expectations versus God's expectations. Society tells you to fit in, follow the script, be predictable. But your spirit whispers, you were not created for the ordinary path. And so your mind lives in a constant state of tension between responsibility and authenticity, between tradition and revelation, between what you were taught and what God is teaching you through the Spirit. This inner pull creates a strange mental sensation, as if you're always on the verge of stepping into a version of yourself you have not yet met. You feel the future tugging at you. You feel destiny breathing on your neck. You feel God shaping you, cutting away the excess, sharpening your edges, refining your heart. And even though the process hurts, your mind somehow understands that the pain is purposeful. You begin to crave transformation more than comfort. And that alone separates you from the world. The chosen mind is not satisfied with illusions. It hungers for truth even when the truth hurts. This hunger makes you question things you once accepted blindly. It makes you examine the motives of people you once trusted easily. It makes you walk cautiously in environments you used to feel comfortable in. And while others accuse you of being negative or suspicious, you know something deeper is happening. You're learning to distinguish between light and disguised darkness. As this discernment grows stronger, a new mental challenge appears, the burden of silence. Chosen ones often see the truth long before anyone else, but they also understand that speaking too early can create chaos. So they hold their revelations quietly. They observe silently. They pray privately. They let God confirm things in His timing. This silence protects them, but it also isolates them. There are moments when your mind feels heavy with unsaid truths, things you can't explain to others because they aren't spiritually prepared for that level of insight. The world teaches people to speak without thinking. Chosen ones think without speaking. They weigh their words. They test their spirit. They examine their motives. They ask God for clarity before they act. This disciplined mind is not weakness, it is maturity. But it comes with a cost. People misjudge your silence. They assume you're distant, cold, uninterested, or withdrawn when in reality, you're processing life at a depth they cannot imagine. Another challenge that grows with spiritual maturity is the conflict between empathy and boundaries. Chosen ones feel deeply, and because of this, they naturally attract broken, wounded, confused, lost, or spiritually unstable people. Their hearts radiate healing energy, which draws those in pain. But with this spiritual magnetism comes mental fatigue. You feel responsible for people's emotions even when you shouldn't be. You feel compelled to save people God never asked you to rescue. You pour from wells that haven't been refilled. And when you finally set boundaries to protect your peace, guilt tries to creep in. Your mind then becomes a battlefield of compassion versus self-preservation. You wonder if stepping away makes you heartless. You wonder if saying no makes you selfish. You wonder if protecting your energy means you're failing your calling. But at some point, God teaches every chosen one a powerful lesson. You cannot save the world while destroying yourself. Your peace is part of your assignment. Your boundaries are part of your anointing. Your rest is part of your obedience. And still, another mental challenge rises, the unpredictability of spiritual downloads. Chosen ones often receive sudden insight, wisdom, warnings, or revelations at the most unexpected times. In the shower, lying in bed, walking outside, talking to someone, or sitting in silence. Your mind becomes a spiritual antenna constantly receiving signals from heaven. At first, this feels chaotic, as if your thoughts are scattered or coming too fast. But over time, you learn that this flow is coordinated, not chaotic. Each revelation has a purpose. However, receiving deep insight constantly can be mentally overwhelming. You may feel like you have too many thoughts, too many ideas, too many messages, too many visions. Your mind races with spiritual information that others would quickly dismiss or fail to understand. You begin to wonder, why do I see so much? Why can't I turn it off? Why do these thoughts keep coming? Why does God speak to me this way? And the answer is simple, because you are chosen. God trusts you with what others overlook. But because He trusts you, He must also teach you how to handle revelation without drowning in it. This training is not easy. It requires discipline, maturity, and spiritual grounding. Many chosen ones experience what feels like mental overload, but what's actually happening is spiritual calibration, the mind adjusting to a higher frequency. As you navigate these experiences, you notice another mental challenge, the unexplained waves of emotion. Chosen ones often feel things long before they understand them. You may wake up with heaviness, joy, urgency, or clarity that seems to come from nowhere. These emotional shifts are spiritual signals. Your mind and spirit are sensitive to what is happening in the atmosphere. You can feel storms before they form. You can feel breakthroughs before they arrive. You can feel shifts before they manifest. But these emotional waves can be confusing. You may ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Why am I sensing something when nothing is happening? Why can't I explain what I'm feeling? But chosen ones operate on spiritual time, not human time. You feel things early because you are meant to prepare, pray, or position yourself before everyone else wakes up. Another daily challenge comes from identity conflict. The chosen mind holds two identities at once, the version of you shaped by the world, and the version of you shaped by God. And every day, these two identities clash. The old you wants safety. The new you wants purpose. The old you wants approval. The new you wants truth. The old you wants to please people. The new you wants to please God. This tug of war can feel exhausting, but it is the very process that transforms you. God is not just awakening you, He is unfolding you. And unfolding requires pressure. The chosen mind feels this pressure constantly. A pressure to grow, a pressure to break patterns, a pressure to be honest, a pressure to reject distractions, a pressure to rise above old fears. But this pressure is not punishment, it is preparation. You cannot step into a divine mission with a worldly mindset. So God rewires you from the inside out. He breaks generational thinking patterns. He dismantles old belief systems. He removes distorted mindsets. He heals emotional wounds that shape your thoughts. And though this process feels mentally intense, it is divine surgery. Your mind is undergoing spiritual reconstruction, making room for the version of you destined to lead, guide, heal, and illuminate. But perhaps one of the greatest daily battles chosen ones endure is the struggle with spiritual attacks disguised as thoughts. Not every thought that enters your mind belongs to you. The enemy fights chosen ones through suggestion, confusion, doubt, insecurity, fear, or sudden intrusive thoughts. This is why your mind feels like a battlefield, because it is. The enemy cannot stop your calling, so he tries to disrupt your focus. He cannot break your anointing, so he tries to wear down your mind. But chosen ones eventually learn something powerful: the enemy attacks what he fears. If your mind is a target, it means your mind is a threat. You carry revelation he cannot afford for you to release. You carry spiritual authority he cannot afford for you to activate. You carry purpose he cannot afford for you to step into. The warfare around your mind is not proof of weakness, it is confirmation of assignment. And then there is the challenge of dual awareness, being mentally present in the physical world while spiritually aware of the unseen realm. Chosen ones walk through life experiencing two dimensions simultaneously. You hear conversations differently. You observe people differently. You notice spiritual energy behind jokes, behavior, or small interactions. You see through masks. You discern hidden agendas. You catch spiritual meaning where others see coincidence. This dual awareness can feel mentally draining, but it is part of the calling. You were never meant to live with closed eyes. And at the end of each day, when the world goes quiet and you are finally alone with your thoughts, you feel another challenge, the loneliness that calling brings. Not physical loneliness, spiritual loneliness. The ache of carrying a mind that sees too deeply. The weight of carrying wisdom beyond your age. The heaviness of having no one to confide in at the level your soul requires. You try to explain your thoughts, but most people only hear your words, not your spirit. But even this loneliness has purpose. It pushes you closer to God. It makes you rely on Him for understanding, comfort, and guidance. It shapes intimacy with the Spirit that goes beyond religion and into relationship. The chosen one learns to be alone without being abandoned, silent without being empty, isolated without being lost. And this is the mystery of the chosen mind. The very challenges that make you feel different are the same qualities that make you powerful. Your battles are your training. Your sensitivity is your compass. Your discernment is your shield. Your silence is your protection. Your visions are your guidance. Your mind is your ministry. You are not crazy. You are calibrated. You are not overwhelmed. You are spiritually awake. You are not isolated. You are set apart. You are not misunderstood. You are miscategorized. You are not losing yourself. You are becoming yourself. And every day, as you face these challenges, you grow stronger, wiser, sharper, and more aligned with the mission God has placed within you. The world may never understand the war in your mind, but heaven does, and heaven is supporting you. There comes a point in every chosen one's journey when the mind no longer tolerates illusions. You begin to see through people, situations, and systems with startling clarity. And once your eyes open, you cannot force them shut again. This clarity becomes both your blessing and your burden. Suddenly, you realize how many things in your past were spiritually disguised, relationships that were assignments, not accidents, attacks that were warnings, not coincidences, delays that were protection, not punishment. Your mind becomes a place where truth rises like dawn, revealing everything that once hid in shadows. But this truth comes with responsibility. When your mind awakens, you no longer have the luxury of living unconsciously. You can't pretend not to notice the spiritual atmosphere around certain people. You can't ignore the heaviness that comes from being in the wrong environment. You can't deny the conviction in your spirit when God tells you to leave, to wait, to pray, or to be silent. This inner command, this spiritual instinct, this divine knowing, it shapes the entire architecture of your mind. And yet, with this elevation comes one of the most subtle challenges, the pressure of consistency. Chosen ones feel the expectation, from heaven, from their calling, from their own spirit, to stay aligned at all times. They know how quickly the enemy strikes when the mind drops its guard. They know how easily old habits can slip back in if the soul becomes complacent. They know how dangerous it is to be spiritually asleep even for a moment. So their mind carries an unspoken burden, the need to stay awake, aware, discerning, and grounded. This expectation creates a mental tension that others cannot understand. You are constantly monitoring your energy. You are constantly checking your spirit. You are constantly assessing your emotional responses. You are constantly measuring your decisions against your destiny. And even though this internal responsibility is sacred, it can also feel exhausting. But chosen ones learn something profound. Peace does not come from escaping the world, it comes from mastering their inner world. Your mind becomes your sanctuary. You begin to cultivate spiritual habits that protect your mental landscape: stillness, prayer, silence, grounding, and connection with God. You realize that your mind sets the tone for your entire life. What you allow in, your thoughts becomes the atmosphere of your spirit. What you entertain mentally becomes what you manifest spiritually. So you guard your mind like a sacred temple. You begin to notice how certain people drain your energy. How certain conversations leave your mind feeling polluted. How certain environments disrupt your inner clarity. And without apology, you begin to remove yourself. You stop explaining your decisions. You stop seeking approval. You stop trying to justify your intuition. You start making choices from alignment, not obligation. And this independence brings another mental challenge: the fear of disappointing others. Chosen ones are naturally empathetic. They care deeply. They want peace. They want harmony. But as your mind awakens, you realize you cannot carry everyone with you. You cannot shrink your spirit to make others comfortable. You cannot sacrifice your peace to protect someone else's ego. You cannot betray your intuition to maintain loyalty to people who were only meant for a chapter, not your whole story. So you choose yourself, not from selfishness, but from obedience. And though this self-alignment feels liberating, it also brings waves of guilt. You wonder if you're being too distant. You wonder if you're being too selective. You wonder if you're being too guarded. But your mind eventually learns that separation is part of elevation. The path of the chosen is narrow, sacred, and intentionally selective. Another mental battle emerges as you awaken: the contrast between your inner growth and your outer environment. You outgrow the version of yourself people think you still are. Your mind evolves faster than your surroundings. You see things differently. You speak differently. Your values shift. Your priorities change. Your purpose becomes clearer. And because of this, you feel out of place in the spaces you used to belong to. This dissonance can make you question your identity. You feel the tension between who you were and who you are becoming. You feel the discomfort of being too big for small spaces. You feel the pull towards something greater, even when you cannot define it yet. This transitional space is mentally challenging. It feels like walking through fog while carrying fire inside your chest. But this fog is not confusion. It is transformation. God often conceals the final destination while sharpening the mind for the journey. You learn to trust the unseen. You learn to move even when clarity is incomplete. You learn that intuition is a compass stronger than logic. You learn that obedience is a language of the spirit. In this evolution, another challenge arises, the need to unlearn. Chosen ones often discover that much of what they were taught, about themselves, about life, about God, about limitations, was wrong. Their mind begins the process of shedding old narratives. You unlearn fear that was never yours. You unlearn shame placed on you by broken people. You unlearn beliefs rooted in trauma rather than truth. You unlearn identities you accepted out of survival, not purpose. This unlearning feels like mental detox, painful, emotional, disorienting. It feels like losing parts of yourself. But you soon realize that you're not losing yourself, you're losing the version of you that was never real to begin with. The chosen mind must be emptied of falsehood so it can be filled with spiritual truth. And with this truth comes another challenge, the increased sensitivity to spiritual warfare. Chosen ones don't just think differently, they feel differently. They can sense when something is off. They can detect manipulation, seduction, deception, or hidden agendas without evidence. They feel spiritual attacks before they manifest physically. Their mind becomes attuned to subtle shifts in energy, tone, emotion, and atmosphere. This heightened awareness is a gift, but it can feel overwhelming. You are constantly reading between the lines, constantly scanning for spiritual danger, constantly discerning the invisible. And while this instinct protects you, it can also make you feel like your mind is always on. Even in moments of rest, your spirit remains alert. This vigilance may feel exhausting, but it is an essential trait of the chosen. God entrusts you with sight, not for fear, but for protection. Another mental battle chosen ones face daily is temptation disguised as opportunity. The enemy approaches chosen ones indirectly, not through obvious evil, but through distractions that look good, connections that seem harmless, decisions that appear beneficial, and paths that feel comfortable. Your mind must sift through these illusions carefully. You begin to ask yourself, is this from God or is this a trap? Is this alignment or distraction? Is this connection divine or deceptive? Is this timing God's or mine? This level of mental discernment is demanding, but necessary. The chosen mind must stay sharp, because the enemy uses subtlety, not force. He doesn't need to destroy you, he only needs to distract you. And distraction is the greatest enemy of destiny. Another challenge emerges in the chosen one's journey, the weight of supernatural experiences. Dreams feel prophetic, thoughts feel guided, encounters feel meaningful, signs feel intentional. You begin to receive spiritual messages in moments you least expect. Your mind responds to heavenly nudges with increasing sensitivity. You feel God speaking through symbols, impressions, whispers, and divine timing. But these experiences, while beautiful, often leave you with more questions than answers. You struggle to interpret them. You wonder if you are reading too much into things. You wonder if your spiritual sensitivity is causing you to misinterpret reality. You wonder if you're being dramatic, but deep inside, you know the Spirit is speaking. Chosen ones live in a constant state of revelation. Their minds are open channels. And this openness requires discernment, grounding, and wisdom. As you continue to awaken, you face a challenge many never talk about, the fear of outgrowing people you love. Your mind begins to elevate, but not everyone around you elevates with you. Old friends remain stuck in old cycles. Family members stay spiritually asleep. Partners remain attached to worldly patterns. You sense yourself ascending while they remain unchanged. And this creates emotional conflict. You don't want to abandon people. You don't want to seem proud. You don't want to lose relationships. But your spirit knows, you cannot shrink your expansion to fit inside a place God already delivered you from. Your mind must follow your destiny, not your attachments. And then comes another challenge, the constant testing of your humility. As your discernment sharpens, as your spiritual insight grows, as your calling becomes clearer, the enemy tries to plant seeds of pride. He whispers that you are above people. He tries to make you arrogant. He tries to make you judge others harshly. He tries to make you forget that everything you have is a gift, not a personal accomplishment. But chosen ones remain grounded because their mind remembers where they came from. Pain humbles you. Healing humbles you. Isolation humbles you. Lessons humble you. Every battle burns away ego until all that remains is gratitude, wisdom, and purpose. Another mental battle chosen ones face daily is the tension between patience and urgency. Your spirit feels the call rising inside you. You feel destiny approaching. You feel spiritual acceleration. But God's timing and human timing rarely match. So you are forced into a mental posture that is both ready and patient, eager yet surrendered, expectant yet calm. This duality tests your faith deeply. And finally, one of the greatest challenges, the realization that you cannot go back. Once your mind awakens, the old life becomes impossible. You cannot entertain what once satisfied you. You cannot tolerate what once numbed you. You cannot accept what once distracted you. You cannot return to environments your spirit has outgrown. You cannot force yourself into a version of life that no longer fits your calling. This is both heartbreaking and liberating. You grieve your old self, but you also celebrate your new identity. You mourn lost connections, but you also embrace divine replacements. You release old dreams, but you receive higher purpose. Your mind begins to understand a truth God whispers to every chosen one. Your transformation is not the loss of who you are, it is the discovery of who you were always meant to be. And with each challenge, each battle, each moment of awakening, your mind becomes stronger, clearer, more disciplined, and more aligned with the divine blueprint written over your life. You start to see the beauty in the struggle, the meaning in the pain, the purpose in the pressure. You realize that every mental battle was not meant to break you, it was meant to build you. You are not weak. You are not unstable. You are not overwhelmed. You are not lost. You are chosen. And the mind of the chosen is shaped in the fire of spiritual transformation. As you continue to awaken, something profound begins to happen inside your mind. You no longer fight your transformation, you surrender to it. At first, the awakening feels like a disruption, a disturbance, an uncomfortable shaking. Your thoughts feel unfamiliar. Your intuition grows stronger than your logic. Your spirit begins to lead where your old identity used to resist. But over time, you stop battling this change. You start to trust it. You begin to realize that the shift happening inside you is not random. It is divinely orchestrated. The Holy Spirit is restructuring your inner world, removing the mental clutter of years, uprooting generational thinking patterns, undoing the programming of trauma and environment. And though the process feels intense, you begin to see how much freer your mind becomes after every layer is stripped away. You start to think more clearly. You start to see yourself differently. You start to believe you are capable of things you once thought were impossible. Your inner dialogue begins to change. Instead of, "I don't know if I can," you hear, "This is what you were built for." Instead of, "What if I fail?" you hear, "What if this is your moment?" Instead of, "Why me?" you hear, "Why not you?" This shift in inner dialogue is not accidental, it's spiritual maturation. God begins to rewire your mind from survival mode to mission mode. You start thinking like someone who is being prepared, not punished, refined, not rejected, appointed, not abandoned. But as this new voice grows stronger, another challenge rises, recognizing which thoughts are yours, which are planted by the enemy, and which are whispered by the Spirit. Chosen ones live in the middle of three frequencies, the flesh, the enemy, and God, and learning to differentiate between them is one of the greatest mental tests of the journey. You begin to analyze your thoughts carefully. Does this thought bring peace or panic? Does it align with faith or fear? Does it uplift my spirit or drain it? Does it draw me toward purpose or away from it? Does it sound like truth or accusation? Over time, you learn that the voice of God never condemns, never confuses, never shames, never forces. His voice guides, convicts, calms, and clarifies. And as you understand this, your mind begins to operate from a place of discernment rather than reaction. But even with this clarity, the internal battles do not disappear, they simply evolve. You begin fighting deeper enemies within yourself: procrastination, self-sabotage, emotional triggers, old insecurities that secretly shape your decisions. These subtle forces hide beneath the surface, influencing your behavior without your awareness. And as you awaken spiritually, God shines a spotlight on them. Suddenly, you see how self-doubt has held you back. You see how overthinking has paralyzed you. You see how fear has shaped your relationships. You see how unhealed wounds have controlled your reactions. You see how pleasing people has weakened your boundaries. This realization can feel overwhelming. You may wonder why so many inner issues are surfacing at once. But what's really happening is this: God is preparing your mind for elevation. You cannot step into the next level with the old mental patterns that kept you small. So He exposes every invisible chain attached to your psyche. This exposure feels uncomfortable, but it is liberation masked as discomfort. And as you heal these patterns, you begin to face another challenge: the awareness that you are mentally evolving faster than the people around you. Conversations you once enjoyed now feel shallow. Arguments you once entertained now feel pointless. Environments you once tolerated now drain your spirit. You begin to crave depth, truth, honesty, maturity, and spiritual alignment in ways you never did before. This craving naturally creates separation. Not because you believe you're better, but because your mind is no longer compatible with old frequencies. But separation brings loneliness, a specific kind of loneliness only chosen ones understand. It's not that you lack people around you, it's that you lack resonance. You hunger for conversations that feed your spirit. You long for connections that align with your purpose. You desire relationships that speak your language, the language of depth, awareness, and destiny. And until those connections arrive, you walk alone. But this solitude is not punishment, it is refinement. In this quiet space, your mind becomes more disciplined. Your spirit becomes more grounded. Your intuition becomes louder. Your purpose becomes clearer. What felt like isolation becomes incubation. In the stillness, you begin to confront another challenge: impatience with your own progress. Chosen ones often feel the urgency of their calling long before they step into it. You feel destiny pressing on you. You feel potential stretching inside you. You feel preparation happening in the unseen. But nothing seems to move fast enough. You want to leap, but God is still teaching you how to walk in certain areas. You want manifestation, but God is still shaping your character. You want the platform, but God is still building the foundation. This divine delay tests your mind deeply. You wrestle with frustration, doubt, and the fear that you are falling behind. But chosen ones eventually learn that divine timing is always strategic. God does not rush what He values. And when He is preparing someone for a great assignment, the preparation process is long, intense, and detailed. What feels slow to you is precise to heaven. Your mind slowly shifts from urgency to trust. And as trust deepens, you encounter another challenge: the responsibility of knowledge. The more spiritually awake you become, the more accountable you feel for your decisions. You can no longer act in ignorance because you see too clearly. You can no longer pretend you don't know what's happening. You can no longer justify behaviors your spirit has already convicted you about. This accountability feels heavy at times. You realize that enlightenment is not just a gift, it is a responsibility. You are called to walk with integrity even when no one is watching. You are called to choose truth even when it costs you. You are called to follow the Spirit even when it isolates you. You are called to live at a standard higher than the world around you. This standard sharpens your mind. You become more intentional. You start questioning your motives. You analyze your triggers. You observe patterns in your behavior. You pay attention to the spiritual consequences of your choices. You realize that every decision shapes your destiny. And while this mental vigilance is powerful, it also brings fatigue, spiritual fatigue, emotional fatigue, mental fatigue. You feel tired not because you're weak, but because you're carrying a level of awareness most people will never touch. You are fighting battles others can't see. You are healing wounds others don't acknowledge. You are resisting temptations others fall into easily. But chosen ones eventually learn the balance between responsibility and rest. They learn that rest is spiritual warfare. That silence is protection. That retreat is strategy. That restoration is obedience. God teaches you that your mind cannot operate at full strength if you never recharge your spirit. As you grow, another challenge emerges unexpectedly: the fear of your own power. You begin to recognize the influence of your words, the authority of your spirit, the intensity of your intuition, the force of your discernment. You start seeing how your presence shifts atmospheres. How your prayers break obstacles. How your insight exposes deception. How your energy awakens people. And this realization can feel intimidating. You may question why God would entrust such depth to someone like you. But that humility is exactly why He chose you. In time, you accept your power not as ego, but as assignment. You learn to wield it with wisdom, compassion, and responsibility. Another challenge is the unpredictability of spiritual elevation. Some days you feel strong, clear, aligned, unstoppable. Other days you feel drained, overwhelmed, clouded, unsure. Your mental state fluctuates as your spirit transitions. You realize that transformation is not linear, it's cyclical. There are days of revelation followed by days of rest. Days of clarity followed by days of confusion. Days of expansion followed by days of contraction. Chosen ones learn to embrace these cycles instead of resisting them. You understand that confusion is not regression, it's integration. That silence is not distance, it's preparation. That stillness is not stagnation, it's recalibration. Gradually, you become mentally resilient. You begin to think from a place of faith rather than fear. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to discern instead of judge. You begin to trust instead of question. Your mind transforms from battlefield to weapon, from chaos to clarity, from burden to blessing. And then comes the most liberating realization of all. Your mind is no longer your enemy, it is your ally. The thoughts that once sabotaged you now strengthen you. The doubts that once crippled you now teach you. The triggers that once controlled you now reveal you. The fears that once trapped you now refine you. You become mentally unshakable because you have learned the language of your own soul. You no longer fear the intensity of your thoughts. You understand them. You no longer hide from your emotions. You feel them consciously. You no longer silence your intuition. You honor it. Your mind becomes aligned with your calling, your identity, and your spirit. And in that alignment, you step into the next level of what it means to be chosen. To think with clarity, to walk with purpose, to see with discernment, and to live with conviction, daily, consistently, intentionally.